Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto.
In a world on the brink of disruption, two men will bring you clarity by interviewing some of the most intelligent and influential names in the blockchain world. Welcome to Show Me the Crypto with your hosts, Wade Patterson and Ulf Lonergan.
Well, hi there, and welcome to Show Me the Crypto. My name is Wade Patterson.
And I'm Ulf Lonergan.
We're a couple of friends from Canada who love learning about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, and we're happy you're along for the ride. Whether you're a crypto virgin or you know your way around the block, we hope our interviews with some of the most intelligent and influential people in the blockchain space help deliver you with value. And on this episode, we're joined by Paul Puey, CEO and co-founder of Edge, which is a self-custody crypto exchange and security platform. Paul's wide-ranging career path took him on a journey from lead engineering position with NVIDIA to owner of non-technical small businesses. Paul's experience as first an architect and then a user of tech allowed him to quickly grasp the concept of Bitcoin in 2013, and he has been building in the space ever since. Paul, welcome to Show Me the Crypto.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, guys. Thanks for that introduction. It's a glowing piece of my past and history. Hopefully I can live up to it over the course of this interview and then afterwards. So thanks a bunch.
I'm sure you will. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. And this is something that Ulf and I noticed when we were doing research, is that you are somebody who is an early adopter. So going back, whether it was developing custom web content management systems before people knew what a CMS was, or being an advocate of keto before it was cool, and then even discovering Bitcoin 2013. Why do you think you're a person who catches on to trends so quickly?
Not sure if it's so much me catching on to trends. I think the trends, there's a commonality in the trends that I catch on to, and Bitcoin fits into that. And it's really a kind of a middle finger to the established thought process. You know, it's like, what do you think the world is? How do you think the world normally operates? It's probably not that way. And I really like finding the life hacks, like the things that are like, hey, this isn't what we know. This isn't what we're taught for the past 50, 100 years, but maybe what we've been learning these past 50, 100 years isn't actually right. And it's motivated by something else, probably money. And that's the trend that I've found myself going down the path of. Maybe not so much in the content management system. That was me just building a site for our friends to go and hang out on the early internet web 1.0 days. But definitely the attachment to keto, which at the time wasn't really seen as like, what the hell is this? How in the world could this possibly be healthy? Now it's like all over the place. And the realization that the sugar industry, and the grain industry and the anti-fat propaganda that we saw pretty much all my life has been an entire lie. That's the path. That's the trend that I've kind of followed. And Bitcoin's just following suit in that. Oh, here's the way money should work. Governments are supposed to print it. They're supposed to back it. You're supposed to hold money in a bank. Oh, maybe that was all a lie too. And so that's really the trend. So I don't know if it's really being a futurist and early adopter to these keen ideas, or just always looking for ways to see, or to question the narrative. I think that's probably the trend, is question the narrative. Don't necessarily always fight against it. You have to question it and then do your own research and come to your own conclusions. And those few pieces of my life came to the conclusion that, yeah, I think there is a different way that the world can and should operate.
Speaking to your history, as far as in your life from a career standpoint, it's interesting that you worked for in tech for a decade and then got out of tech and went into entrepreneurship and ran non-technical businesses for another decade before moving into Bitcoin and crypto. How has that whole sort of experience and timeline brought you to where you are today in the world of crypto, and taking everything you've learned and kind of putting it into your business with Edge?
Yeah, I'd say that my life outside of tech was actually one of the more difficult, but also most valuable life experiences. To give you full kind of insight into the why, I kind of broke down, like physically, health-wise broke down working in tech. I am, admittedly, you could probably learn this from both my wife and the people I work with, a bit of a workaholic. When I get into something, I go 150% on it. Whether it was, me working in Silicon Valley at NVIDIA, and I'd pull late nights, sleep on the couch in meeting rooms because I just loved what the hell I was doing, to building that little website, which built the first CMS that I'd ever heard of, because I wanted to build a website for our friends to get together and post photos and say what we're doing and create events, kind of like a mini Facebook at the time. I would do that until the sun came down and the sun rose, and I wouldn't even realize how much time passed by. A bit of a workaholic, but that, of course, isn't healthy for you. I'd physically broke down, got repetitive strain in the wrists, and couldn't use a computer. And that brought the end of my engineering world. Like how could I possibly be an engineer? How could I be a developer in Silicon Valley when I could barely touch a keyboard? But it also opened my eyes to what was not working in the health and kind of health and wellness space. I went to pretty much every kind of doctor known to man to help with the problem, and none of them worked. And they would give me everything from like just random shots and pads and pills to take. Nothing worked. What did work is the kind of thing that they never recommended: chiropractic, which recommended physical therapy, strengthening, exercise, and stretching. The stuff that I was never told to do. Instead, it's get ergonomic, but then, just keep working, right? Take these shots, these anti-inflammatories, but then just keep working. And so the whole Western medicine world and traditional medicine and doctors didn't do a damn thing. And it drove me to basically losing a career for the next decade, during which I found other methods which definitively helped, right? And that opened my eyes to, gosh, all these experts, maybe they don't really know what they're talking about, at least in some of the angles that they're supposed to be able to help with. That was the first moment of truth, right? And at that point, I had entered into kind of more of the small business. First worked in like a bar or restaurant. Then I started working in a climbing gym. I was a big avid climber. I don't have much time to climb anymore, having a startup in the cryptocurrency world. I still try to get into the gym once in a while and do a little bit of climbing. But when you're also surrounded by that group of people, a bunch of granola outdoorsy people, they're also about like F the system and F what you normally hear as far as how I should be taking care of myself. You get a bunch of yogis who will shun a lot of traditional meds as well. It's like, there's better ways for you to fix your body, right, than what you would normally get. And so I really got surrounded by that mentality, and I saw how it worked, the people that I was surrounded with, and how they had a much better life balance on a health-wise, mental-wise. And I was inspired by that. And it really wasn't, and I never had the interest of going back into tech. I honestly didn't. I got paid a whole lot less, but it was a much more fun, humble, and enjoyable living. And it wasn't until I discovered Bitcoin, which, although it's in tech, it fully aligned with this vision of, gosh, what is, against the narrative? What's a new thing that's contrary to what everyone is saying and about how the world should work? Discovered that. And as I'd mentioned in a few other interviews, I became kind of the worst employee at the job at the time, because that's all I could study and listen to. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm pretty like OG or original, but I can't claim myself as that, because by the time I discovered Bitcoin, there already were blogs and podcasts to learn from. There weren't many. For a lot of people that are a bit newer, they'd be surprised to hear that when I first got into Bitcoin, there was one podcast.
Wow.
And it aired twice a week. I think it was a 40 minute long podcast, aired twice a week. And I would wait till the next episode. I'm like, all right, it's Wednesday. I get to listen to the next episode of Let's Talk Bitcoin,
Nice.
And I would just listen to it on the way to work. And I get to work and it's not over yet. And I just sit in the parking spot, just like listening, learning more about Bitcoin, and then be over. I'm like, gosh, you're not going to wait till Sunday for the next podcast. Whereas now there's obviously a ton of different podcasts, but the industry has grown too. So you need more podcasts to cover all the different swaths of what cryptocurrency is now. So it makes sense. Industry grows, you need more content to cover all the different facets of it. But that kind of is a description of what brought me full circle. Like, engineering in that life and not understanding, health really is what broke me down, brought me into the small business space, found ways to kind of recoup and heal that were contrary to the rhetoric. And then I found this other technology, which is very contrary to the rhetoric, and it fully aligned. I'm all full on board, and admittedly, probably not as healthy as I was before, body has broken down a bit, being the workaholic that I used to be. I have learned a few lessons from the past, so I know how to control it. But at the same time, now I just feel like I have a lifelong mission, to drive this technology forward to the masses, even if it's not for my best interest. But I want to be part of the history books, which I think a lot of us do.
Given that background you just explained, it makes sense that, when you discovered Bitcoin in 2013, that it clicked right away and it aligned with all of these things that you had noticed in your previous jobs. But it is still pretty crazy to think you went from discovering Bitcoin in 2013 to launching Edge just 1 year later. So kind of what did that process look like? You just talked about you were immersing yourself in education, but at what point did you have the conviction that you wanted to launch Edge?
Oh gosh. There was a moment, rewind, the meetup scene. I have a lot to thank for the entire meetup scene, meetup.com. Thank you very much. I found a lot of my climbing buddies from that website. And then I found a lot of people that I know in the cryptocurrency space from that website. And I actually found all of the co-founders of this company through events in the meetup scene. And so I got involved with the San Diego meetup, the Bitcoin meetup, which had existed before I had even found out about Bitcoin. But I got involved with that meetup, and I remember going to some events at some pizzerias, and there'd be like literally 3 people, 2 to 3 people. If 6 people showed up, it was an awesome event. By I think October, it was either September, October of 2013, I had already become an organizer, helped organize some of these events. I found venues, hopefully convinced them to take Bitcoin. And I wanted to give a little bit of how-to on how to use Bitcoin and how to secure it. At the time, I was using an old open source wallet, which most people here have not even heard of, called Armory. Mm-hmm. It was one of the more popular ones at the time. It was a desktop. Well, it wasn't multi-sig, as multi-sig didn't exist at the time, but it was a split key, air-gapped type of remote desktop, not a remote desktop, but a desktop that you could have offline to sign transactions. And I was giving this demo of how to use it to about 12 people. It's one of our biggest meetups at the time. Oh my God, 12 people showed up. I was giving this demo, and I pride myself to being a decently good educator when I understand a topic. But I was giving this demo, and about 10 minutes into it, I could see that the audience of people listening to this demo and instructional thing just had glossed over faces like, oh, is that what we're supposed to do to secure and send our Bitcoin? And I was like, oh, I wanted to stop the presentation right there. I go, guys, I'm so super sorry about this. I will build something better. Right? I wanted to stop at that moment. I said, I'll just finish this presentation. I finished it, answered some questions. Like, people understood it. They understood what they had to do. They were just incredibly intimidated by it. And that was one of the sparks. And I actually met one of our co-founders at that meetup. Him and his girlfriend were there at the time, and we've been great friends ever since. And he helped find some of the other co-founders and was a big part of the early days of Edge at the time when we were called Airbitz. So that was kind of the spark. And it was through the meetup scene that I started kind of bouncing ideas off people of, hey, what are ways to build, what we would call the better wallet, the easier one to manage keys. And really the key management was what really threw me off. And what threw off a lot of the people at that demo was like, how do you deal with taking these keys and splitting it up and writing it down? Just really invasive and unfriendly, unforgiving. And that's been the core focus and the foundation of what we built at Edge. That was, in essence, hopefully the answer to your question, that was that moment that I said, I want to build something. And through the next few meetup events where I got to talk to some people there who ended up being some of the co-founders and early investors in the project, is where we kind of came up with the architecture and the design. And then by, I think, January of 2014, the main co-founders and team were fully together, and we just started cranking.
Following on that, that idea of the meetups and the conferences and stuff like that, I'm just curious, because we were talking before we hit record about going to different conferences. It was a bit of a busy June for you. Over the years, have you gone to some of the Bitcoin like on an annual basis? And if so, what has that been like, the evolution? I mean, Ulf and I went for the first time to Bitcoin in Miami in April, and I think there was 30,000 plus people, but I can only imagine from you, hosting these meetups at an early time when there's like 3-5 people, that the conference scene probably has evolved quite a bit.
Oh, for sure. My first conference was, I think, in October, November in Las Vegas of 2013. That was, I think, one of the I think it was like the third or fourth conferences in the world. And that one had maybe shy of 1,000 people, and it felt huge. I remember going to Bitcoin Magazine. The booth for Bitcoin Magazine was a white folding table, 6 feet wide. That's all it was. Had absolutely no banner behind it. Had nothing on the table, even a tablecloth. And this lanky kid comes with holding a box of Bitcoin Magazine, right? Plunks it down on the table and is like, "Would you like a magazine?" Right? I'm like, "Sure." "Would you like a magazine?" "Sure." I go, "Hey, I'm Paul. What's your name?" "Vitalik."
I thought you were going to say Vitalik. Oh my god.
Yeah, exactly. He pretty much was a core piece of Bitcoin Magazine. So yeah, I got a Bitcoin Magazine from Vitalik, who at the time was barely a name. He was a great writer for the magazine, but obviously this is way before Ethereum had seen even light of day or even a white paper. And so yeah, 1,000-person conference was what we considered to be on the large side. And typically speaking, a lot of conferences, because we were going right into the bear market. Like Edge, Airbitz had what I call terrible timing with respect to the Bitcoin cycles. Founded the company right at the peak of the bull market, but then the market just dove and launched the app right in the bear market when a lot of people didn't give a damn, and Bitcoin was dead. It was one of its obituary years. But yeah, we went to the conferences that had 60 to 100 people. That was pretty common during the bear market. And I remember 2017 we hit 3,000 people, which seemed unheard of. In 2017, I went to a non-Bitcoin conference called Slush. And it's a conference in Helsinki for general startups and investors. Like Google shows up, Andreessen Horowitz shows up, a lot of big companies, PwC, and then a ton of startups come to this thing. And it's a 15,000 person conference. And I remember going to this going, wow, this is huge, but it's not a crypto conference. That's why it's so big. And thinking, wow, it's amazing if crypto ever got to this size. And at that time, I think the biggest conference in 2017 was, about 3,000. Although consensus in 2018 hit around 8,000 people. So we're like, oh my God, wow, this is massive. And of course, being someone that went to a 100-person conference, it became to the point where like, gosh, who are all these people? Where did they come from? What brought their interest? But that's fair. You start learning it from this person, that person, and it is a compelling technology. And it's surviving over those years makes people realize it's not going away. And when you start getting that level of conviction, people come out to play. And that's totally fair. But admittedly, apologize, I'm still recovering from a bit of a cold.
Oh, no worries. But
there are still some conferences that are relatively small, 1 to 200 people. And admittedly, I highly recommend people try to go to some of those. A lot of people avoid them. Oh, that's a small conference. Hardly anyone's going to be over there. But you go to those because the people that attend, you have an opportunity to interact with pretty much everyone. Yeah. That's what I kind of miss. Like I would go to some of these larger conferences, and I'll know about 100 people attending a 15,000 person conference. That's not a lot of people. But I might not see any of them. Yeah. Might not see a single one of them unless I intentionally say, hey, let's meet up this exact time and this exact place if you even are available. I didn't go to Bitcoin 2022 in April. I just went to the festival after party and that's it.
Nice.
But I did go to Blockchain 2022, which was immediately after it. It's held by Michael Turpin of Transform Group, their PR agency. They've been around since early days, 2012. And it's a much more intimate conference. Brock Pierce spoke at it. Jeremy Gardner, who invented Augur, which is the first ICO on Ethereum back in 2015, 16. They attended and spoke at it. And you see them not just on stage, but you see them in the hallway, you see them, in the break room, and you really get an opportunity to interact with the people there. And so I wish the best for those kind of events as well. We need the gigantic ones that bring in pretty much everybody and the huge companies and the big name speakers. And then we need some of these smaller intimate ones that really give people an opportunity to meet the people more face-to-face versus going to like a concert where you're never going to get backstage, So that's kind of the transition that I've seen in the scene, is that you're always backstage in the old conferences. And now it's like going to this massive concert and, only a few people get to interact with others. And it's hard to serendipitously run into the people you want to talk to, but it's a necessary part of growth.
Yeah, I love hearing that because that's going to strike a chord with Wade and I because, going to Bitcoin 2022, that was one of our criticisms because for us running a podcast, we were hoping to meet and have a chance to speak with some of the speakers and the people who you're going to see. But it's such a big conference. They have their bit on stage and then they're gone. Like you don't really see them. So we got to get out to some of those smaller ones and check them out to have that more intimate experience. I think that we'd be looking for, and probably a lot of other people too.
No, exactly. Do definitely check them out. I went to a smaller one in Miami called Miami Crypto Experience. They partnered with Michael Turpin and his Transform Group Layer 1 events to host the Blockchain 2022 event, which only had like maybe 100, 200 people at most, but still some pretty big name speakers. And so those are great ones to go to and be able to have more one-on-one time with people. Like, I'm not sure if you know Tone Vase. He's got I think 300K Twitter followers, a pretty popular YouTube channel. He was there and I got to sit down on a table of 4 with him and chat for like half an hour. And fortunately, I've known him since early days in like 2014 before he became a big YouTube celebrity in the crypto space, and even spent the night over at his place in New York several times. I needed a place to crash for a conference in the bear markets. And so we're we good acquaintance / friends in the space. But yeah, those some smaller conferences are worth looking into if you want to be able to have more face-to-face with the people that attend and some of the speakers.
Nice. So getting back to Edge Wallet and starting Edge, which at the time Airbitz you mentioned, privacy in the world of crypto back in the day, in particular, if we're talking about Bitcoin, privacy was really one of the major, selling points, if you will, around what Bitcoin did or provided. And maybe today that narrative has shifted a little bit, but for Edge, privacy seems to be at your core. Now, has that always been the case? Did it start that way? And has it always been, at the forefront? Or has that kind of changed at all with the landscape of crypto itself changing with all these other tokens, protocols, and privacy? There's different levels of privacy across different crypto projects now.
Yeah, I'd say privacy has from day one been at the forefront of what we build at Edge. At the time, it was Airbitz. And you could see it in the ethos of the co-founders, especially my co-founder, William Swanson. He's the kind of guy that is so keen on privacy and control that he builds the operating system that he puts on his own Android phone.
Wow.
He doesn't trust
the next
the
level.
OS. Yeah, he doesn't trust the OS that came with the phone. Yeah. So he'll download the OS, the open source OS, build it, and put it on his phone. Now, he doesn't have like the Google Play Store and whatnot. He's about like a lot of the control and knowing what's happening on the phone, knowing that he hasn't, installed some, spyware, of which, a lot of standard apps are kind of spyware already as they are. He has that level of desire for control and privacy. I balance it out where I want privacy though, but I want it where people don't go through any extra effort to get it. So admittedly, a lot of the tools I use do compromise my privacy. I'm the kind of person where Signal, when I started using it back in 2015-ish, was horrible. It crashed all the time. The UX sucked. I couldn't do emojis, blah, blah, blah. So I just didn't use it. It just sat on my phone, never used it. But I checked on it every year. And I think 2 to 3 years ago, it suddenly clicked that, wow, this is actually better than WhatsApp. And I switched everyone I knew to it. I said, hey, if you're going to chat with me, Signal. Telegram, kind of garbage in a few different ways. Like by default, I'm Signal unless you really don't have it and don't want to use it and whatnot. And that's what I'm looking for is building products where, my friends who don't care about privacy, they use Signal. They don't even have to care that it's private. They're not going through any extra hoops to get privacy. Now, admittedly, back when we had first launched Airbitz, we got compared to other wallets with respect to privacy. We scored pretty well, actually, like top 3 on a few different fronts, which were fairly subtle. But we had these other wallets that their whole pitch was privacy, but you had to jump through hoops. You had to push this button to mix your funds. right? You had to push this button to be able to change an address. You'd push this to this. And there was always like this extra work. And while we could do that in Edge, what we would like to do is keep an eye on technology that can hide the privacy steps, the complexity steps of getting privacy, and just give it to someone who doesn't even care. Because there's one fundamental thing about privacy is for those of us that care, like say the three of us care a lot about privacy, we're not going to get a lot of privacy if only the three of us are using the privacy preserving tools. But if we get everyone we know and everyone that they know and everyone that they know to be using privacy preserving tools like Signal and like Edge, Airbitz, even if it's only the three of us that care about it, we get a much higher level of privacy.
Ulf, do you realize our audience has been either watching or listening to this episode for 20 minutes?
20 minutes? No, they should probably subscribe.
Yeah, they should subscribe. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you comment and turn on notifications. And if you're listening to this podcast, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and a review.
We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. So go check out the episode description. You can find all that information below. And we have an update on the NFT, don't we?
That's right. We didn't previously mention this, but this NFT for OG supporter is a one of one. There will only be one of this kind ever minted, and we have a few surprises for the person who purchases it. The link is in the episode description.
And back to the episode.
And in terms of growth, I mean, it's been significant going from 2014 to now, over 1.7 million accounts, I believe, something like that. So what's that journey been like? I mean, that whole explaining to the consumers the importance of Edge and everything like that. And then have you seen it being kind of more recently exponential growth? These things tend to have that hockey stick growth curve. Is that what you've been seeing?
We definitely see the growth map the price of Bitcoin. You say it, when the prices go up, people hear about it, the news talks about it, people want to get into the apps, they download Edge. And so it pretty much maps that. And admittedly, growth was really tough the first few years as Airbitz. We launched right into the bear market of 2015. That was probably the worst bear market in the history of Bitcoin. It was the longest, just drawn out, terrible bad news happened. Mt. Gox crashed. What's his name? Charlie Shrem was arrested. There's just so much bad news at the time, and it lasted quite a while. And I'm surprised we even survived it. And so growth was relatively stagnant during our era as Airbitz. Like we grew. We had some sticks here and there. Sometimes those coincided with really issues in other apps that we were able to overcome, where people say, "Oh, this app's not working." They couldn't handle the volume. Like Bitcoin volume would spike, and servers and nodes would go down. And some of those other apps couldn't handle that, whereas ours was able to, at least able to do it better. And so those are some of the hockey sticks that we got, but they were brief. And it wasn't until really we did the pivot to Edge that we saw more meaningful growth. Now, Edge also launched into the bear market of 2018, right? 2017 was the big hockey stick, and we kind of missed a lot of that growth because we were building in 2017. 2017 was our building year, is when we were building Edge, and we couldn't have timed it any worse. If we built Edge in 2016, launched in 2017, it would have been awesome. Would have killed it. But we did that pivot a little bit on the later side, launched in 2018. The market was already downturning. But even so, we saw about 3 to 4x year over year growth during the bear market years. 2018 to 2019 was 3 to 4x growth. 19 to 20, 3 to 4x. 2021 was 3 to 4x. And so consistent growth. 2022, I don't think any company is growing from 2021 to 2022 the way they did 2020 to 2021. Like that, it's just super hard. Every company in crypto always has to take a dip in the bull to bear. Now, once you're in a bear year, there's a good chance you can grow bear year to bear year. All right, as long as you can execute, you can do that. But bull market year to bear market year is pretty tough. But yeah, our growth didn't really more significantly start until our pivot to Edge in 2018. And so that was a worthwhile pivot. The product seems like it's hit its stride, but definitely we had some pretty rough years in the early days. Those weren't fun bear market years in 2015, 16, 17.
You might be surprised to hear that we've interviewed a lot of different founders of different projects, and a lot of them had started building or launched their product right into the bear market. Now, most of the ones we've talked to is during the 2018 bear market. And the interesting part about that is I find those are the ones that seem to like, at least the ones we've talked to, I guess maybe that's because they're the ones who made it through, but the ones who made it through the bear market, having launched their product, during that time, end up maybe coming out stronger. I don't know. But do you think there's any truth to that? I mean, you kind of presented it as purely like downside in both cases.
Yeah.
But do you think there's any upside to your timing?
I think the upside is that you're not seeing a notable downward trend in your product right off the first 2 years.
Right.
So if you launch in 2017, for example, you're just all upside. You have a great first year and your second year is terrible. Right. So you don't have this growth into the first few years, which looks terrible if you just launch high and then just crash right off the bat. So there might be something to be said about that, especially if you overspend in that first year because you've barely got any, just your early seed funding, and you're seeing all this money come in and you're overspending and you're thinking that that's just going to continue, and you go right into year 2, you don't know what you're doing, and suddenly everything just kind of bottoms out from underneath you versus going through some of the harder years, being a bit more frugal, growing a bit more steady, in pace. And then by the time the bear market comes around, you kind of know how to manage, how to kind of manage the harder times. So there could be some truth to that. Is that, there's an analogy to that. My dad used to grow mango trees, and he said the best ones are the ones that grow in the harshest soil and survive because they actually learn how to sow deeper roots.
Right.
They have to sow much, much deeper roots to get to the water that's deeper. And when there's a tornado and a hurricane, they don't just get blown over. The ones that just kind of live in the lap of luxury, with all the water and moist, great, fertile soil at the top, don't sow deep roots. They just get toppled over in the hurricane. So they're similar analogy. There could be some truth to that. But admittedly, when you're in it, sure isn't fun.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, no kidding. And I think there is a lot of truth to that. So if there is somebody listening to or watching this episode, they're probably already bought in, because if they're watching during this time, good on them kind of thing. But maybe they're not. Maybe they went through the bull run 2021. It was the first time they ever bought crypto, or who knows, NFTs, anything like that. And now they're seeing this huge downward trend. What is your advice to those people of what to expect in the next little while, but also just to get them through this more difficult time?
Everything I could say might be deemed financial advice.
Fair enough.
It's okay, because this is not financial advice.
All right, it's not financial advice. Buy the dip. Buy the dip.
Okay, let's just take finances out of it. I mean, just in general, maybe it's somebody who wants to get a career or have a career in Web3 or something like that. I mean, your thoughts on why paying attention to the industry at a time when maybe people are joking about it, laughing about it, think it doesn't have a real future.
So if you want a job in the industry, admittedly, given as many people have seen a lot of the layoffs in the space, it's going to be harder, right? There's no question about it. It's going to be harder to get a job in the space, but there definitely are jobs to be had. There are some companies that are still hiring. I think the constant across bull and bear markets, this is probably not answering your question, but the one constant about the crypto industry, which I've always loved and I've always tried to tell people that are trying to get a job in, especially the developers, and especially the juniors. Most mid-level to senior developers don't have a problem getting a position. A lot of the juniors and out of college, they're the ones that typically struggle. They always come across the job post, which is needs minimum 3 to 5 years of experience. Like, well, where the hell does someone like me ever get started? The beauty of the crypto space, the unique beauty of the crypto space, which I've never seen prior, is that there's many for-profit companies or for-profit projects that are open source. And that's unique because you could literally be using a product that you like and love, and it's open source. How many times prior to crypto could you go download an app in the App Store, download an app for your desktop, or use a website that is a product that you enjoy using, and it's open source? It's super rare. super duper rare. Now it's actually pretty prevalent. Edge is one example of that. So is I think like Trust Wallet and a good handful of other solutions. BRD, back when they existed before they got bought out, all open source project, which means you as a developer can use something. And if you don't like something about it, you literally can change it and submit a PR. There is no more powerful piece of your resume than to have a contribution to an open source project that's out in the wild in production with millions of accounts and users. That is a bullet point that if someone submitted a resume to us and say that they've even contributed a simple PR that they can put a link to and I can look at it and see their code for even just one snippet and know that this other reputable project accepted it into their own, that means that your code was good enough for them to accept. That's huge. And that's an open door that the tech industry just hasn't had ever. And that's going to be available there, bull or bear market. But for the people that are trying to get in the bear market and they need to stand out and differentiate, that is a good way to differentiate when it is harder to get a job. So use that one unique offering that crypto has, as opposed to all the industries in and before cryptocurrency, all those industries before. Use that to your advantage, especially now when you need to kind of stand out from the crowd. It's a great way to stand out.
I love that advice. I think that's great. So with Edge being around for as long as it has now, 8 years or so, now Airbitz before that, and then Edge, what are some of the best moments along the way? We've already touched on maybe some of the lower moments, but if you've got some stories around the best and or the worst moments during the journey to get to where Edge is today, we'd love to hear them.
See there, it's been quite a ride. The best moments, and this maybe is less to do about Airbitz Edge, but really about our industry as a whole and some of the experiences of my co-founders. I remember 2015, we launched Airbitz, at the time, not the full wallet, but in April of 2014, we launched, because we were focused on payments and merchant adoption. We had a merchant directory that we launched first. Many people don't know this. The first iteration of Airbitz was just an app, kind of like a Yelp app, but without the voting, that just showed you a map of where you could spend Bitcoin. And you won't believe how many people still ask us, like, hey, when are you going to bring back the Airbitz merchant directory? And I'm like, well, there used to be 50 merchants here in San Diego, and there's maybe like 2 now. And so, it is, people don't want to spend their Bitcoin. That's fair. But one of the pride and joy moments was when 2 of my co-founders at a Toronto conference, the Toronto Bitcoin Expo in April of 2014, joined up with Amir Taki, which at the time was a big name in Bitcoin. He had developed a wallet called Dark Wallet. It was a very, very privacy preserving. He was one of those like high level of privacy, you got to jump through hoops, but we still like the mission of what they were doing. My co-founder, William, actually worked closely with the developer and the founder of Dark Wallet on their code base, which we partially used in Airbitz. So we actually used the code base of this Dark Wallet called LibBitcoin, which is still in development today, because it had some of these privacy features. We didn't end up using them because, once again, it would require extra steps for the user, but we used it because we thought we could eventually. But they joined together, 2 of our co-founders and 2 of the people from Dark Wallet entered a hackathon at that conference and actually took first place. Wow. And that hackathon was building a decentralized, private, anonymous marketplace, which used Bitcoin multisig and arbitrators to be able to trade goods online without a central company. And while that was a great moment for us, like, oh, we got on stage, we won the hackathon and whatnot, the bigger pride joy is the fact that project got picked up and became a major company in the space. They've since folded, but they were around for probably like 5 years, and that was OpenBazaar. And OpenBazaar actually won like a consensus award in, I think, 2016 or 2017 as, I think 3 different awards at that conference for like best Bitcoin project, most exciting, blah, blah, blah project. When they won like 2 or 3 awards. And while we weren't a part of that, we feel like, wow, we were able to help launch that. We contributed to that effort. And I wish they were still around. I got to know Brian Hoffman, who was the CEO of what became OB1, the for-profit company that was building OpenBazaar, the open source project. They were funded by Andreessen Horowitz, some major backers. And so that was one of the highlights. I remember that. And it put a lot of like pride and joy in the mission of what we were doing, the people we were working with. And it showed that the industry cared about building something that was autonomous and fairly and very privacy preserving. So that was a fond memory for sure. I can't forget that moment. And others were definitely much more subtle, but we've had some major spikes along the roadmap and along the lines of privacy, which is a kind of our original topics. We noticed a significant spike in the early days of Edge, like middle of 2018, right after we had launched Edge into production, when we became the first multi-asset app to incorporate Monero. And we saw that there were a lot of fans of Monero, but using it was a horrible experience. And most of it were just Monero only wallets that, there was no other choice. So therefore they didn't really have to build a great UX. That process of using it was a bit heinous. And we were the first to actually make it usable and also make it tradable. People could buy and sell Monero from within our application through our exchange partners, with no personal information, no account signups. And that saw a huge hockey stick in growth for like the next 2 or 3 months for us. And we got a lot of attention within the industry for, once again, that privacy preserving piece. So that was a good pride and joy moment for us. It was like, this is great because we're aligning with our mission, aligning with the vision, and being rewarded for it at the same time. And I'm sure there's more moments like that I can't recall amidst all of the years and months. But those are 2 notable highlights that I'll take with me to this day. The overarching memory, at least for me personally, that I've enjoyed has been the people that we've gotten to work with, and the people I've gotten to meet, and the people I've gotten to work with in the process of building the company. That's the thing that keeps me, getting up in the mornings and coming to work and enjoying what I do. I think we've been fortunate as a company to have brought on, not just good people, but good people that you kind of want to work with. They're not just the kind of people that crank, but you stick them in a closet and don't interact with me. I've worked with some of those people, especially like in NVIDIA. I had people that are like, wow, that guy's a genius. Put him over there. I don't want to talk to him. I just know he puts out great shit, but I don't want to talk to him. Whereas I've been able to be fortunate enough to surround myself with people I really enjoy being with and that put together and put forth good work. Nice. So that's the overarching experience.
There's been a lot of interesting things happening in the space over the last couple months, with Terra Luna, with Celsius. Yeah. What do you make of all of kind of the recent things that have been happening, and I guess very recently with BlockFi as well? Yeah.
It all fits under the rhetoric that we've been saying for a long time. Terra Luna a little bit less so, but the beauty of, I hate to say this, these 2 words don't even go together. The beauty of the Terra Luna issue is that everything that could have happened to Terra and Luna was sitting in front of everyone right from day one. You knew the architecture of this protocol. You knew where the money was coming from, and you could tell what would cause it to crash. And many of the people we talked to, like obviously as a startup, we talk to VCs all the time. And, some of them got burned. Those are the ones that we're not talking to because they have no ability to do any kind of investments. But the ones we talk to, they're the ones that survived. And they're the ones that could see it happening. Like they put money in, they're like, this is a little bit sketch. And they knew the signals as to when this thing could collapse. So they were taking a calculated bet. Right? And they could tell that this thing was unstable, but it had some returns that you could gain until then. And they could see the signs. And when those signs of instability came about, they pulled money out. And so it's 100% transparent. That's kind of the beauty of the cryptocurrency space. But you have to know what you're looking for, or you have to follow the right people that know what to look for. But it's at least fully transparent. BlockFi and Celsius, this is exactly why you hold your own keys. I can't say it enough. I've been saying it every year. I've been saying it every cycle. Every cycle, there's always a reason why people get burned. I mean, there's always an example of self-custody being valuable. And that example is usually a custodian mismanaging money, losing money, getting hacked. It's happened day in, day out, every single year. Augur being one of the first ICOs on Ethereum from back in like 2016. I've used it a couple times. And I remember the one marketplace that I said, I'm going to put money into that was a bet. If for those that haven't heard of Augur, it's a decentralized prediction market. Right? You can put in an event, a future event, and people can buy shares in the outcome. Will it be X or will it be Y? Will it be A or will it be B? And someone put on a market that said, will there be an exchange hacked for more than $50 million by the end of the year. They're like, oh, absolutely. Yes, I'll put money on that for sure. And yes, I was right. Like it's like a surefire bet. I don't think I won any money because I think everyone was betting the same thing, right? If everyone's buying the same shares, there's no money to be made. And I think I basically broke even. And so that is just so true. I mean, crypto was built so that people can hold their own funds. And it's almost it's not even a double-edged sword. It's a single-edged sword that has an extra sharp side, because crypto was built so that you could hold your own funds. And it was built in such a way that if you don't, it's extra dangerous. Yeah. It's more dangerous than a bank holding your fiat money, because fiat money being printed by the government can be insured by the government, and the banks can't really be hacked to digitally transfer money to anything other than another bank. Like, what do you do when you hack a bank? You wire money to another account, which has a name, social security number on it. And so you didn't really hack the bank.
Right. The
only way to hack a bank is with a gun and, one of these surgical masks. That's hacking a bank. Crypto exchange that's holding money, or a custodial wallet as well. You send that money out, it's gone. And that is the most dangerous digital asset we've ever had from a custodial point of view. So it is not a double-edged sword, it's a single-edged sword. That single edge is custodian holdings, but it's extra, extra sharp. So what do I think about it? If these returns in DeFi seem too good to be true, make sure you follow or understand how the money flows. Where's the money coming from? And what could cause that to abruptly stop or go in reverse against you? And then second to that, on the flip side, Celsius and BlockFi, hold your own damn money, right? Those are also the too good to be true, but you don't even know what's going on underneath it. You can't analyze it. It's fully opaque. That's like the worst case. You just never know when things are going to go wrong. You won't see any of the signs. Too much risk. If people were getting 8% return on their Bitcoin, and that sound like amazing numbers, who here is in Bitcoin for 8%? Like, we're not in Bitcoin for 8%. There's a common meme. I don't wake up for less than 10x. Well, so what the hell is 8%? It's not a service I would ever use. And so I would use DeFi, and only if I felt like I was going to get returns of more like 300% a year. And there, I at least have full transparency. I'm going to do crazy due diligence and know my risk, and only put funds that I feel like I'm okay, losing a larger portion of. And so that's kind of my overall take, right? DeFi, you just got to study it. You got to study it, have someone else study it for you. Custodians, just don't do it. Just don't do it, period.
Can you tell us a little bit about the future of Edge? Where's it going? It's currently you have over 130 assets available within the platform to store and manage your crypto. Where's it going in the future? What's on the horizon?
Got it. So in a 4-letter word, DeFi. I know that DeFi had its summer, DeFi summer 2020. People got all excited about that.
Good summer.
And then it kind of just suddenly fizzled, and it was all about NFTs out of nowhere. But I think DeFi is here to stay. What I love about DeFi is it takes the layer of money that Bitcoin kind of built. We got a decentralized money with peer-to-peer transactions, no third party. But when I was in Bitcoin back in 2013, I saw a ton of startups that basically built financial services on top of Bitcoin. But because Bitcoin had limited programmability, it was all centralized loans, centralized interest bearing this, blah, blah, blah. I was all fully centralized. So it's almost like we only replaced the very bottom layer of the financial stack. But everything above it was just like basic banking services. And that always kind of disheartened me. I was like, this doesn't feel right about this. And with the advent of DeFi, I finally saw more layers of the financial stack getting ripped away from the banks in the CeFi world. So that's what excites me. I use it personally, and I love using the tools that are fully available in CeFi. And I can just say, give the finger to CeFi and go, no, I'm going to put in a DeFi protocol and get better deals, full control of my money, full transparency of what's happening. But, big but, it sucks to use DeFi. Like, it really blows chunks. The user experience is absolutely terrible. Let's take the Celsius compared to Aave. Right? From a user experience, not from the, hold your money and transparency point of view, user experience. Celsius, create an account with just my email and password. Simple as that. Put in some Bitcoin. And then I say, I want to take out a loan. All right, here's some Bitcoin. I want to take out a loan of, half that value and link my bank account in Celsius. Boom, I got dollars in the bank account. Done. straightforward. I think the same thing with BlockFi. I haven't used BlockFi, but kind of the same process. Say you want to do that with Aave. Well, what does that feel like? All right, so you got Bitcoin in some wallet, right? But you can't deposit a Bitcoin in Aave. So let's go and swap it for wrapped Bitcoin. All right, that might take a few minutes to a few hours. So you do a swap, you wait. And then finally it shows up in an Ethereum compatible wallet, which may be the same or different than the one you were using to hold your Bitcoin. In case of Edge, it could be the same one. Now you've got to leave that wallet app and go to a website, right? Aave.com, app.aave.com. You got giant bells and whistles everywhere, all these switches and different assets. And like, what do I even click to take out this loan? So you figure all that nonsense out. You figure, okay, I want to deposit some wrapped Bitcoin. So now you have to sign a transaction. You got to like wallet connect, your app to this website. That's like one step you got to do, wallet connect, which is glitchy as F, right? It's just terribly glitchy. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And then you want to send your wrapped Bitcoin into Aave for collateral. You have to do an approval transaction for the token. All right. And for most people, like, what the hell does that even mean, to approve the transaction? All right, well, do it anyway. Approve the transaction. You got to wait for confirmation, which if you're lucky, it's 30 seconds. If you're not, half an hour, Ethereum fees spike up. That finishes. Now you have to actually send the token in for collateral. All right. Okay. Wallet connect, confirm, slide, blah, blah, blah. Sign this transaction, even though you have no clue what the hell it's doing. All right. Sign. And then you wait. Okay. Your collateral is deposited. Now you got to go pick all the bells and whistles to figure out your loan itself. Figure out which stable coin you want to borrow amidst the like 6 stable coins. Hopefully you pick one that you can actually sell to your bank. You might pick something that nobody has support to sell to your bank, but hopefully you pick like DAI or USDC. You do that transaction, you wait, and finally it shows up inside of your Ethereum wallet, which if that wallet allows you to sell to your bank, great. If it doesn't, then it's like transfer it to an exchange, have your bank connected and sell it into your bank. And now you've finally taken out that loan that Celsius did in like a few different steps, all within the same app. That's the DeFi experience. Powerful, groundbreaking, globally accessible, much more private, but really, really blows chunks from the UX. Our mission at Edge, which you'll see pretty soon, is to give users that Celsius experience, but with true DeFi. All right? People just simply have the Bitcoin in Edge and they choose to take out a loan. Here's your LTV ratio you're going to get. Here's the interest rate you're going to get. Specify where you want it to go. Maybe you just want to hold it as a stable coin. Maybe you want to deposit in your bank account, right? You will have to link a bank account just like you would in Celsius. You could do that right inside of Edge through one of our partners. And then you just slide to confirm. Out goes the Bitcoin. It gets swapped. It gets, those 3 transactions, approval, a deposit, and then the loan, and then the stable coin gets sold into your bank account. And you just had to do one slide to confirm. Things like that are the future of Edge. We want to take DeFi and hide all that DeFi nonsense behind it and make it feel like the Celsius and the BlockFis of the world. And then now we're competing on a level playing field. If you really want that centralized service because you want, that company you can call and ask, hey, what's my balance and blah, 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 then sure, you have that as an option. But for everyone else that does want to control their own money but doesn't want to deal with that terrible UX, they'll finally have Edge. That's the future of what we're building. And we're always looking for those cool DeFi protocols that are lacking that good user experience, but have high demand. Like they really have built a protocol people want. And that's the kind of thing we're going to put great effort into integrating. It is not easy. I got to admit, like we're in the midst of integration of a DeFi protocol and streamlining that UX and like, wow, are we tackling a hard problem with a lot of challenging corner cases? But once you deliver it, it's going to be like, whoa, you've just created magic. Like, how did you do this? So really excited to get that out the door. Expect that's the kind of thing you're going to see out of Edge going forward. Of course, decentralized exchange is a big piece. We've only got a little bit of support right now for DEXs, but that's going to grow. Cross-chain as well. Think chain flip and Thorchain, so people can go from one asset to another and not have to rely on a centralized exchange like some of our exchange partners right now. That is what I would say is the big future. We haven't widely shared details about this, but we're evaluating building our own DeFi protocol, which does not exist, like one that will offer a service that we want to have in the app, but we just don't see anyone building it. So that we haven't announced, haven't shared what exactly it is, what it'll do. But that one's an exciting piece of our roadmap as well. So yeah, big 4-letter word, DeFi. I know it's pretty generic, but it's not just DeFi. It's finally bringing it into that buttery smooth experience that you would expect in the more centralized services. Because to us, that's our competition. A lot of people say, well, who are your competitors? Is like Trust and Exodus? And we're like, yes, but no, because we're shooting a little bit further. We're shooting for those centralized services. And the thing that we didn't cover about Edge, that is a big differentiating factor. I mentioned it, that key management part from back in the old days when I was teaching people how to use Armory. Edge's key management is vastly different in the sense that people don't ever have to write down the 12 words. They just create an account and log in, and everything is encrypted and backed up. Feels like CeFi, but gives you true DeFi.
Cool.
It's good to hear you're working on that, because that, I think, is the biggest thing. You know, like Ulf and I, we feel like in some ways we've been in the space for a few years, but we still feel, compared to a lot of people, that we're very much learners in the space and just trying to wrap our heads around things. But then you have a conversation with someone who's not really familiar. Maybe they don't own any crypto or anything like that. And you just start explaining the process of some of these things, like you just did with using Aave. I'm like, wow, I've never actually articulated all of the steps, but you're right. There's a lot of steps there.
A lot of steps. I've done those steps like a couple dozen times. And so I know them by the back of my hand.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and even things like seed recovery phrase, what you were just talking about. I was talking to my brother the other day. He's about to set up his first Ethereum wallet, and just walking him through, he's like, so wait a second. I've got to write this down. I can't let anyone see it, but if I ever lose it, that could be a big problem. If anyone ever finds it, it could be a big problem. I'm like, yes, like it's a very scary experience. So I just wanted to comment and say it's good to have you working on these problems, because I think that is the single biggest friction point of mass adoption.
Mm-hmm.
You should definitely set up, was it your brother you said?
Yeah.
Your brother? Set him up on Edge. Let him ask him what he thinks of it. Because there's no seed phrase for him to write down. No. He can write down his password. And if someone sees it, he's still protected. That's kind of the beauty of it. So that's something fundamentally different, is that we're much more forgiving while still giving you that autonomy. And you can still connect to these DeFi apps using Wallet Connect, which, as much as I hate the protocol, it's kind of needed still. So we support it, but we'll improve on that.
One thing I want to ask you about, Paul, is, so Edge supports, Ulf mentioned this earlier, 130 different crypto assets, but your Twitter and Instagram profiles only mention one, and that is Bitcoin. Do you consider yourself a maximalist?
Absolutely not. In no way, shape, or form. I won't deny that Bitcoin is the granddaddy. It's the first. It's what launched everything else. It's what most things are based on. And heck, when I was part of when I'm still am, like we host Bitcoin meetups here, and the meetup was called the San Diego Bitcoin Meetup, but we covered many different assets. For me, Bitcoin and saying Bitcoin is a catch-all for a majority, not all, but a majority of cryptocurrency. To me, it's open blockchains. I'm definitely against closed, private, enterprise blockchains, that nonsense where blockchain's a database. Oh, come on, really? And so, but for sure, I'm nowhere close to Bitcoin maximalists. The maximalists hate me. I've gotten flamed by maximalists left and right. No question about it. Even though some of my friends, like Tone Vase and whatnot, but I've seen over the years, many of them slowly realize the value. And I think DeFi really brought the value to a lot of Bitcoin maximalists. It did for a few people. And we have a resident maximalist here at Edge. And when we pitched...
Do they like that title? The resident
maximalist? It's lighthearted here. So I can call him that in front of someone else, and we just giggle about it. Yeah. But he's been in Bitcoin forever. Like, he built his own exchange in 2012.
Wow.
When we presented this DeFi protocol that we want to build, he was the first person to come up and go, I want in on that. I want to be a part of that. That is compelling, And so I think it opens eyes, because for a lot of Bitcoin maximalists, they realized it is really hard to provide these financial services on top of Bitcoin without compromising on that decentralized nature or that self-custody nature. You give up a lot of the things that you say are the reason why Bitcoin should exist. Because you end up being like, okay, well, now I've got to use BlockFi to take out a loan. Or I got to use Celsius to earn yield. There isn't really good ways to keep control of my funds, but be able to do those grander financial services. And when you realize that these other chains enable you to do that, and some of them can also be very Bitcoin centric. So I'm a big fan of Rootstock. Have you guys learned about that project yet? Had a lot of news back in the 2016 era, 2017 era. They're a side chain of Bitcoin with full EVM compatibility. Slight difference, but for the most part, it looks like Ethereum. And it has, a side chain bridge. Let's say you take Bitcoin and mint smart Bitcoin, rootstock BTC, SBTC or RBTC, depends how you want to call it. But that's a fully pegged token to Bitcoin, and then use it in smart contracts, and you can reverse peg and go back. That's built by the IOV Labs team. They actually one of their big backers is Digital Currency Group, which hosts Consensus. And IOV Labs had me on a panel over at Consensus because we talked about the same initiative, which is everyday DeFi, bringing DeFi to the masses. So for the Bitcoin maximalist, many of them also don't like rootstocks because it's this smart contract Ethereum compatible chain, and people can launch tokens on it. And as soon as it's a token, it's a shitcoin to the maximalists. But they lose sight of the fact that, well, now you can take your Bitcoin and do something with it. Right? You can earn yield on it. You can leverage it if you wanted to. You can borrow against it and never have to touch Ethereum. Right. So I'm a fan of that project as well. I'd recommend if you can get one of them on the podcast, could definitely talk to one of their team. But no, by and large, like the last thing I would call myself is a Bitcoin maximalist. If anything, the closest thing to a maximalist I am is a self-custody maximalist. Like I'd say, I definitely hold your funds to the strongest degree that you can. But I invite a lot of the innovation that the other chains have brought. If it wasn't for them, I think this space, this industry wouldn't be half the size that it is today, because it wouldn't draw nearly the same level of interest from a broader swath of the population than what Bitcoin could. But I'm grounded, fully respect, love what Bitcoin is and what it brought to our world. And I forever will hold some Bitcoin, no question about it. And so that's kind of where I stand. But yeah, no question, not a maximalist. It's one of those, like, if I put the other coins that I like, it just wouldn't fit in the Twitter profile, and I do want to show that I'm not like against Bitcoin, but I'm definitely not only that.
Totally fair. Before we get to the end here, I do have one last question, but then we'll move into our 3-question segment we ask all our guests. But this question goes back to earlier in our conversation. We mentioned you're great at identifying, or maybe just, jumping on trends before they're a trend, getting in early. So as someone who's maybe got a knack for that, what do you see as far as the trends for the crypto industry as a whole over the next year or so?
Man, I feel like I haven't, my ability to identify trends has definitely hit a bit of a halt since crypto, because I've gotten so focused on that. If anything, maybe the better answer to that question would be, what are the trends outside of crypto? Like I said, keto, health industry, the cryptocurrency and Bitcoin space. What's that next thing that is bucking the narrative? That's what I would generally look for, is like, hey, what does everyone take for granted as truth? And then what is the technology or the trend that is bucking that? I don't know that I've seen that again in the crypto space. Like, oh, this is just true narrative, and then this is fully bucking the trend. I know a lot of people are excited about NFTs, and I think it has a use case, but I don't know if it has that same power of, oh gosh, the narrative has always been this, and we're now proving it's fully inverted to that. Right. I don't know if it fits that same category. So I could say what I'd hope it is. What I'd hope it is finally, after the many years and the many examples, and this is going back to my self-custody maximalism, hopefully after the many years, we start seeing the self-custody solutions actually overtake the custodial ones. I think that is a trend that I both hope for, and I think our industry needs. There was slight examples of this in 2020, where I think the average daily volume on Uniswap exceeded Coinbase, but it didn't last long. But it was a hallmark moment to say, oh my God, a decentralized exchange actually exceeded the largest company in crypto, right? And what did it take to build a decentralized exchange in resources? It took less than 40, at the time they had less than 40 people and like 10 or $15 million in funding. What did it take to build Coinbase? Hundreds and hundreds of $1 million of funding and thousands of people. Like, it had thousands of employees at the time. It had a certain amount of exchange volume compared to Uniswap, which just barely eclipsed it. I think that shows the power and efficiency of the DEX space and of the DeFi space, where you can accomplish a lot with far less, because you don't spend so much money on lawyers and banking relationships and regulatory compliance and all this stuff. You just be efficient, just build. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to hope that is the trend. We're going to finally start to see DeFi and DEXs eclipse centralized alternatives. Things like Aave, or the Aave borrowing integration inside of Edge, would eclipse what you'd see out of the BlockFis and the Celsiuses of the world. A cross-chain decentralized exchange like Fortchain possibly eclipse one of the bigger kind of what I'd call crypto to crypto exchanges, like a Binance. Like, that would be amazing. I don't know if that'll happen in the next year, possibly in the next 5 years. I mean, that's kind of my hope in the next bull run. That bull run will show the power of these more DeFi-like protocols, DEX protocols, more, I hate the word decentralized, but more decentralized-ish protocols that replace their centralized equivalents. That's my hope of the next bull run. That would make me excited, very, very excited, and keep up the hope that we're still on the right mission and that crypto is actually going to achieve its goal, as opposed to just be this thing that Wall Street traders bounce up and down.
Paul, this has been a great conversation. We've enjoyed learning more about your story, diving into all things Edge. Ulf mentioned a few moments ago that we do have a 3-question segment that we ask every single guest on the show. It's a segment we call You Had Me at Crypto. Ulf's going to ask you those questions.
Sure.
All right, Paul, you ready?
Go for it.
Okay, the first question here is, who is your favorite person to follow in the crypto space?
It was Andreas Antonopoulos, and I haven't had a favorite since. Admittedly, he's kind of gone a bit quieter, not in the digital space, but in the physical space since COVID. And so I feel like I haven't gotten a chance to connect and understand his viewpoints nearly the same degree that I used to. But he was my absolute favorite person to follow. I learned a lot from him. I also learned how to present from him. Like, his ability to explain complex topics was unparalleled. Also generally had a great personality. I also had just a good working relationship with him. Had a lot of one-on-one conversations with him. And he was on that one podcast, back in 2013. Yeah. He was one of the 4 people or 3 people on the podcast when there was only one podcast ever. So I could never forget Andreas. And I give him hats off for being the anchor of my education in Bitcoin as early as I got into it.
Nice. We still got to get Andreas on the show. So
yeah,
hopefully soon.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah. All right. Second question. What will the price of Bitcoin be 10 years from now? Now, don't worry about any financial advice. This is 10 years out. It's just for fun.
It's 10 years out. So this recent bull cycle has thrown major curveballs into like predictions on each cycle. No question about it. And so I'm hoping the next bull cycle gets us back on track, because we did about 3.5x from previous all-time high. I like to measure it bull cycle to bull cycle as previous all-time high to next all-time high. And 3.5x is relatively small compared to prior years. We had almost a 20x before that, a 50x before that. And a 3.5x is almost like, you remember that I don't wake up for less than 10x? Yeah. So I do think that there's still a chance that we get back to normal and actually hit more along the lines of exponential growth. And if it is that, then we're looking at 10x on 10x in 10 years. Plus, we're in a bear market, so we're kind of at a low. So, a 10x from that is only 200K, which many people predicted we would hit in this last bull market cycle. Now, things do slow down with each cycle. So, say we're able to 10x from right now, that would only be 3x from the previous all-time high. 70K to 200K is only about 3x. It's less than 3x. 200K into 10 years, we'll probably hit one more bull cycle. So if it's another 3x, then 200 hits 600, and I think we would be lucky to hit 1 million, but very possible.
That was the most well-reasoned and thought-out answer to that question.
We normally just get a million with no explanation, but I like that. I like where your mind's at.
I got to have something other than just kind of a shoot from the hip, on the price. But I think $1 million is a stretch given just kind of normal circumstances. Now, I think there's a potential black swan event that could get us to $1 million and even higher more easily, which is the fact that the thing I've been looking at is what percentage of the market cap is crypto or Bitcoin, because the problem with looking at the market cap of crypto is it literally includes dollars now. USDC, Tether, and whatnot now are a large portion of the crypto market cap. So now it's like, I want to see the market cap of kind of from scratch issued crypto, not backed by fiat. That I don't know. So you'd have to kind of take the market cap of just Bitcoin alone. And what percentage of the market cap of M1 fiat currency has that been historically? It's been tiny. So 60 trillion has kind of been the estimate of, M1 fiat currency. And we've barely broken 1 trillion ever. All right. So a very tiny percentage. And I've asked myself, at what market cap will Bitcoin's market cap in fiat start to affect the value of fiat itself? Will it start to affect the buying power of fiat to a more significant degree where people will want to escape it? All right. So right now, of course, we're hitting this downward trend in crypto. So people are wanting to escape crypto itself. But at some point, if we actually get crypto rising, coinciding with the value of the dollar decreasing, not necessarily from inflation, but potentially Bitcoin extracting value from it, because it's now a larger percentage. Say it's in the, if we're like at about the trillion, I think we peaked at $1 trillion of market cap in Bitcoin. So you 3x from that, that's 3-4 trillion. You 3x from that, that's like 12 trillion out of 60 trillion market cap. Is that enough to start to extract notable value out of the dollar? Now you might just suddenly have a tidal wave of flow. And then the million becomes just a drop in the bucket, the $1 million price. So that one's a little bit harder to predict, but I think that's that one turning point. It's a little harder to predict when it happens. I think it'll happen pretty quickly, and it will create the massive outflow of the dollar into Bitcoin and other cryptos.
Yeah, it's interesting when you put it that way, to like tie the big move to like a global event like that, where basically the world does a bank run, but rather than bank run for cash, they bank run for crypto. That could definitely have that sort of mass effect where everybody does it. And maybe at that point, crypto is so usable with all the DeFi technology, maybe being fully fleshed out, and it's great user experience, that there's no reason not to go use crypto instead, right? Yeah, it's interesting.
And I'll say this, like when you hit $1 million or $10 million, you won't want to measure Bitcoin against the dollar at that point.
Right.
It won't be too meaningful to measure it against the dollar. You want to measure it against like the amount of eggs you can buy or price of a home. And so that will be an interesting point. We haven't hit that yet clearly, but I know that point's coming. It'll be interesting to see if I see that in my lifetime, but I think it is very feasible.
All right. Third and last question here. What is the most underrated coin or project in all of crypto?
Other than Edge.
We don't have a coin.
Or project.
Yeah. We're the most underrated project. Sure. Coin. We don't have a coin. And so, it's hard for me to do this without pumping bags, because if I think it's underrated, obviously I have it, right?
Yeah, this is why we added in project to the question.
You don't have to pump a coin.
Yeah.
Well, then I just shield my own project. Great. It's like I can't win, right?
It can also be sector. So you've talked about DeFi a little bit. Like that is an acceptable answer. We don't want to like pigeonhole people to have to.
Also, you know what? Everybody hates pumping bags, but you're gonna hype up a project that's good, and if it's good, why wouldn't you buy some of it? I mean, it's a catch-22.
Yeah. So I'll pump. I don't even have a huge bag in this anyway. So I just have some because I was compensated some of this. But I'm a big fan of the FIO protocol, and it is very underrated. Many people haven't heard of it. It's kind of an alternative to the ENS system, Ethereum naming service, which is wildly popular. Yet I'm not a big fan of, because it is the best way to dox yourself. Like Ethereum in of itself, you associate one address, you got this Ethereum address associated to it, this ENS address, and now everyone knows every NFT you own, every DeFi transaction you've ever done, how much money you have in your account, and blah, 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 and up the wazoo. And it also costs a lot of money to register. And it has no roadmap to any level of privacy. It does support multiple chains. You can associate a Bitcoin address to it, but then that Bitcoin address is forever associated to that handle, and there's no roadmap to privacy. Enter FIO under the handle, which is a different chain of its own, and it's specifically designed for this ENS-like functionality and then some. What I do like about it, because it does have functionality that provides privacy and a roadmap to even better privacy. So it has the doxing capability of ENS, where you can simply just link your wallet addresses to this, friendly name. And they're not just domains; they're domains plus a name. So a FIO crypto handle is like Paul at Edge. It's not like Paul.eth. It's Paul at Edge. It kind of feels like what you'd normally get with like an email address. And you can register one for free inside Edge right now. You can get Wade at Edge if it's still available, and or you can register your own domain if you want, similar to ENS. But where privacy starts to kick in is that instead of just linking my wallet addresses to my FIO handle, I can send a payment request to a handle. So I can send to Wade at Edge. I go, hey, can you pay me that $5 for the coffee that I got you the other day in this currency? All right, so it's going to be 0.0 whatever amount of Bitcoin. And that payment request is fully encrypted. Nobody sees it. Only I can see it and only you can see it. And then when you receive it, you get the address that I sent requesting, and only you see that address. Nobody else sees it. And then at the slide of or tap of a button or slide to confirm, you can automatically just pay that right to me. And you can even attach a memo on the payment back to me. You could say, hey, thanks, let's go grab dinner tomorrow, something like that. Or thanks for the coffee. And when I receive the money, I can see that it came from Wade. It didn't just come from some willy-nilly address. I can see that it came from you, but nothing on the blockchain exposes that information. That's what I really love about it, is that it has this metadata layer. Unlike ENS, I can send a payment, attach this encrypted metadata that shows up on your end. And part of that is who I am, so you can see who it is. And that encrypted data is fully invisible to anyone but the two of us. So for payment requests, you get a high level of privacy. For outright payments, you kind of don't, right? It's kind of like ENS. I pay the fixed address you have, Wade at Edge, but at least the metadata, that little encrypted message, I can send that little encrypted message, and that's fully encrypted. No one sees that. They are also on the roadmap adding the ability to link between two people. So I could kind of link, not really link, but I can friend your account. So once I've friended Wade at Edge, and Paul at Edge friends Wade at Edge, now I can push a payment to you without doing a payment request. You can push a payment to me, and the address that we share with each other is completely invisible to anyone on the blockchain. So that in and of itself provides an elevated level of privacy that you don't just dox yourself whenever I want to pay you. That's what I like about the protocol. And it does have its own coin. And that coin is what you use to register domains, register addresses, and to pay for this metadata, this tiny bit of metadata that's encrypted in, when it goes from one person to another. So the user experience is much more Venmo-like than you would get with just Ethereum domain names, right? That metadata layer is really key to that user experience. And we use it widely in our company because several people in our company, we do a lot of Bitcoin in our company and crypto. If people don't know, nobody in Edge Airbitz has ever been paid in anything other than crypto. We've always gotten paid in Bitcoin. And we also use it for operations. Payroll uses it. We pay bills with it. We receive revenue in it. And several people in the company have wallets that need to get tracked financially, like in QuickBooks. And whenever we transfer money between ourselves, we use FIO, because when I receive money from someone in the company, I automatically know who it came from. It's auto tagged. It says, oh, that came from so-and-so. And that person, she or he could attach a little message saying what it was for. I don't have to figure out freak, where did that money come from? Hey, who owns address, blah, 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 and sent me money, on this date and time of this amount. It automatically gets tagged. So we honestly use it for its functionality. So yes, I'm pumping my bags, But I honestly do like this protocol. I think it solves a usability challenge in crypto. So I invite people to check it out and actually not even buy the coin. Don't even check it out to buy the coin. Buy enough to register a handle, register a domain if you want, and then actually go and try to use the protocol. It'll cost you less than $5 to probably cost you like a couple dollars to register your own handle. And I think the foundation is offering it for free for some time. Try registering your own handle in Edge. I think it's free, your first handle, and then just try using it. That's what I invite people to do. Forget the coin. The value will go up as more people use it. Right. But just use the protocol.
Cool.
That's so interesting.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, I'm surprised I haven't heard of that before. But just like with that, you have a gift, Paul, for explaining things very well, very easy to understand. Thank you so much for joining Ulf and I on this episode of Show Me the Crypto.
No problem. Thanks so much, guys, for having me, and look forward to the next episode.
Thank you for listening to Show Me the Crypto. Please make sure to subscribe as well as rate and review this podcast.